So, you've been dreaming of building a Vermont home surrounded by rolling hills, foliage, and beautiful mountain views. But here's the thing, buying land and building in Vermont is not as simple as it sounds. From hidden wetlands to quirky zoning rules, and even roads that vanish in mud season, there are just so many things you need to know before you buy property. Stick around, this video could save you thousands and a whole lot of headaches. Hey, I'm Jacob Barnes with eXp Realty, and today we are talking about buying land in Vermont. First, let's talk about choosing the right location. Vermont has incredibly diverse landscapes for a small state. You've got places like Burlington with a lively downtown and access to Lake Champlain, all the way up to the Northeast Kingdom, where you might not see a neighbor for miles. Think about what lifestyle you want. Do you want to be close to schools, hospitals, and local amenities? Or are you okay with being more remote? If you're considering rural land, keep in mind that some areas have limited access to utilities like internet, electricity, or public water and sewer. Most rural properties in Vermont rely on wells and septics, and a lot of rural Vermonters also rely on satellite internet like Starlink for high speeds. Once you've narrowed down a general area, start thinking about how accessible that property is. Some Vermont properties are on Class 4 roads. These are unmaintained dirt roads that can be nearly impassable in the winter or during mud season. If the property is on a Class 4 road, you'll likely be responsible for maintaining it, which could mean paying for plowing in the winter or grading in the spring. Similarly, if the property is on a private road, find out if there's a shared maintenance agreement with neighbors. If not, you could end up covering all the costs yourself, which is something to factor into your budget. Something you might not think about, but in areas with lots of streams and rivers, you may want to verify that the roads and culverts are prepared for potential flooding, so you won't be stuck at home like some Vermonters were during recent floods. In some areas though, that doesn't really apply. Before you even visit a property, there's a lot you can do to gather information on your phone or laptop. Vermont offers some great online tools to help you research land. The Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, or A&R Atlas, is an excellent place to start. It's an interactive map that tells you about soil types, slope grades, flood zones, and wetlands. This tool can help you identify potential challenges early, such as steep slopes that could make construction more expensive, or flood zones that might limit where you can build. Spending some time on the A&R Atlas can save you from wasting time on land that won't meet your needs anyways. In addition to online research, reach out to the town where the property is located and your realtor. They may have additional documentation such as permits, zoning maps, surveys, or tax information that can give you a better idea of what you're dealing with. Some towns even have detailed records about past projects or any restrictions on the property, so it's worth asking for as much info as they can provide. About 45% of municipalities don't even have zoning. That means those areas have a lot of flexibility in what you can build, unless it falls under state laws like Act 250. But having no local zoning also means that there's less control over what your neighbors might do in the future. If you drive around the Northeast Kingdom, for example, you see a lot of this. Many homes have plywood walls without real siding and have been that way for years. There are trailers and homes that have massive junk piles in their yard, often just down the road from $1 million home with fantastic views. I live in Williamstown, where there is no town zoning, and there are quite a few properties spread around where people seem to have created a junkyard in their backyard. I'm not sure why people want to do that, but some people do. In towns with zoning regulations, you'll need to make sure the land is approved for residential use. In addition to zoning, some properties have covenants or are part of an HOA, a homeowners association. Covenants are rules that restrict what you can and can't do on a property, such as prohibiting mobile homes or requiring certain home styles. HOAs can add rules and fees, so it's important to understand these before you buy. Now, let's talk about what to look for when you're actually evaluating the land. One of the first things to consider is the driveway. If the property doesn't already have one, you'll need to apply for a residential curb cut permit from the town. This permit is required to connect your driveway to the road, and it's not always easy to get. If your driveway is planned on a sharp curve or a hill where visibility is poor, the town may deny your request for safety reasons. It's a good idea to consult with a local road commissioner or zoning office early to see if your plans are realistic. You also will want to make sure you won't have a super steep driveway that you might not be able to get up when it has snow and ice on it. I once had a home seller who had a beautiful home, but the driveway was pretty steep, so when we went to sell, most of the people were coming and saying, "I love the house, but unfortunately the driveway is too steep." And another thing to think about, of course, is the longer the driveway, the more expensive to install and maintain. Look for nearby utility poles. If there aren't any close to the property, running electricity could be expensive, and in some rare cases, it just isn't possible, and you'll need solar power if you want electricity. You'll also want to decide whether you want overhead or underground utilities. Underground utilities are more expensive to install, but less likely to be affected by storms, which is something to consider given Vermont's weather. If you're in a remote area, you probably won't be top priority for getting power back in a power outage, so you will also want to think about a backup generator. When it comes to water and wastewater, most rural Vermont properties won't have access to town water or sewer systems, which means you'll need to install a well and a septic system. Drilling a well can cost anywhere between $8,000 to $15,000 or more, depending on how deep they need to go to find water and how rocky the soil is. For a septic system, the process starts with a percolation test or perk test. A septic engineer will dig small holes in the property, pour in water, and measure how quickly it drains. This determines what kind of septic system you can install. Conventional systems are the most affordable, costing around $6,000 to $12,000, but mound systems, which are common in Vermont, can cost $20,000 or more. If the property requires an engineered system, costs can climb even higher. Septic engineers usually need about 21 days to complete their work, so this is something you'll need to plan for during your due diligence period if no perk testing or permitting has already been done by the seller. Speaking of due diligence, wetlands are another important consideration. Wetlands are protected in Vermont, and building on or near them can be tricky. Setback requirements mean you'll need to leave a certain distance between your home and the water, and you can't build in floodable soils. You can fill out a form with the state to see if any wetlands are known on the property, but this isn't something guaranteed. Sometimes wetland specialists need to visit the site to make a final determination. Wetland specialists don't work between November 15 and May 15 during the winter, so buying or selling land with potential wetlands can be risky that time of year. If wetlands might be an issue, you'll want at least a 30-day due diligence period to confirm everything. Now let's talk about larger parcels of land. If you're looking at properties over 25 acres, it's possible they may be enrolled in Vermont's current use program. This program reduces property taxes for landowners who keep their property in agriculture or forestry. It's a great way to save money, but there are restrictions. For example, if you want to build in the land that is in the program, you'll need to withdraw the portion from the program and pay the penalty tax. Most owners will want at least 27 acres of land though, so you can use 2 of the acres to build on without issues, and then the other 25 you can get the tax benefits on and still use for walking, firewood, or ATV trails. Understanding the specifics of current use is important before purchasing a large property, and there's a lot of information you can read online. Additionally, some agricultural parcels may be protected by the Vermont Land Trust or VLT. There are over 640,000 acres in the VLT. This is designed to preserve Vermont's natural and agricultural landscapes, but it comes with significant restrictions. For example, the Land Trust may restrict buyers to those who will use the land for farming, forestry, or agricultural purposes, which could limit your options. Usually, land in the VLT can't be subdivided, and building or major developments are very limited. Most people won't run into this unless they are looking at very large parcels or farmland, but it is becoming more common as the Vermont legislature is aiming to conserve 30% of Vermont's land by 2030, and they are aiming to permanently conserve 50% of Vermont's land by 2050. Those are pretty lofty goals, and those plans won't make it easier to develop in Vermont. Finally, let's break down the cost of building. Construction costs in Vermont generally range from $250 to $350 per square foot, so a 2,000 square foot home could cost between $500,000 to $700,000 to build. I've also seen luxury builders around $500 per square foot, so it just really depends what you are looking for and the type of framing. Clearing land can add another $2,000 to $6,000 per acre, and driveways can cost $5,000 to $15,000 or more depending on the length and grade. You'll want to work with an architect or designer, which typically costs 8 to 15% of your total build budget. They'll help you design a home that fits your needs and meets Vermont's specific challenges like heavy snowfall in the winter and state-required energy efficiency laws. Vermont currently has some good rebates for heat pumps and things like heat pump hot water heaters, so look online about what energy efficiency rebates Vermont is currently offering when you go to build. Don't forget to think about permits, which can add several $1,000s more. Larger projects might also require an Act 250 permit, a state-level review that adds extra time and costs, but ensures development is environmentally sustainable. Hopefully, you can avoid that process at all costs, and most residential home builds don't actually get caught up with it. Landscaping and driveways add up, and it's always a good idea to budget for unexpected costs too, since delays from weather or supply chain issues can be pretty common in Vermont. Buying land isn't like buying a house. You'll need a land loan, which usually requires a larger down payment and has higher interest rates than a traditional mortgage. Many lenders ask for a 20 to 50% down. If you plan to build within a year or two, a construction loan might be a better option. A construction loan combines the cost of the land and the build into one loan, and the funds are distributed in phases as construction progresses. Local banks and credit unions in Vermont often specialize in these types of loans, so they're a great place to start. I always recommend reaching out to a local lender or a bank versus using a major bank like Rocket Mortgage or Chase Bank. Working with local experts is almost always a better experience, and they are easier to meet with and get a hold of on short notice. If you need a recommendation, I am happy to share some. Buying land and building a home in Vermont is a big undertaking, and it might not be for you, but if it is, it's an incredibly rewarding process. If you're considering it, I'd love to help you find your dream property in Vermont, and make sure to get my free land buyer checklist in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you in the next one.